Hello everyone, and welcome to Game 2 in this best of 3 third place match between Gameslayer and SorenJohnson. Game 1 going over to Gameslayer fairly easily. Takes a strong victory as expansive on a very awkward map, very different from this one. Last game there was very little iron available, very little carbon available. This game it looks like water is going to be a bit of a concern. There are some high tiles available, a couple of medium tiles available as well. So it will still be possible to acquire enough water. It's just going to be a question of who manages to rush to those tiles first, it looks like. I would almost expect a scavenger to throw down in this southwest corner. Decent access to carbon over there. Another option for players will be to throw down expansive. Could throw down in this area near a lot of iron, gather up a bunch of that right on the found. Potentially even right here. Give some nice access to a geotherm. Immediately a couple of high and medium iron tiles, but another option is to plant much closer to the water so that when you establish that you won't have to transport it all the way across the entire map. It's also a good point that silicon is up in this corner. Wow, SorenJohnson actually going to throw down scavenger right in the middle of the map, valuing being near the silicon and the water quite likely, but not caring all that much that he is slightly reducing his carbon income by taking low tiles instead of one medium and then low tiles. So understandable. Gameslayer are actually going to throw down scientific on this map. That's a bit odd, considering there is not good access to strong adjacency bonuses for a scientific player while still managing to use that scientific trait of pulling resources directly out of the ground. So Gameslayer founding second. I believe both players founding with no debt. Once again, no really great spot worth a lot of cash in this particular map. So not too surprising they would want to start with no debt whatsoever. But Gameslayer founding second and getting to HQ level 2 almost immediately. He's going to have an extra claim this time. 4 claims available to our scientific player. Soren should be close behind him in the upgrade. There it is. And let's just see what these players decide they value most. A farm already popping out for Gameslayer. 2 farms. He's going to grab up this water fairly close to him. This is kind of what you expect to see out of someone like Gameslayer. He's going to grab what he can of water tiles for his farm, so he doesn't have to pay the water cost. But then he's just going to add on a third one for adjacency bonuses. This is very early to move into so much food for Gameslayer. It should be plenty to supply the market and more, so I would expect food's price to drop rapidly once he starts pulling that in. But in the short term, as long as he can keep pushing with it, it'll be okay. Geotherm auction being bid on quite a lot by these players. 24,000 might stick there. Could see a push to 28, but no. Gameslayer's just going to grab it for 24. That's another spare claim on over to Gameslayer for power later in the game. He has kind of committed himself to using geothermals for power this game, but that should not be a problem. There is a lot of geothermal on this map. Plenty of geotherm energy available. He's got, I think we see 6 tiles, so that's not going to be an issue for Gameslayer at all. On top of that, he already has down strong steel production and can actually improve it if he wishes. And so this geotherm should not be particularly expensive for him to establish. Unfortunately, he will certainly have to goon squad it, as he really does not want that thing getting hit by dynamite when it's all the way across this map, even on the small map setting. Soren, on the other hand, let's check out what he's been up to. Managed to secure additional carbon income, maybe a bit much for this stage of the game, but we'll see if he can manage to push to the 40 glass he needs to upgrade despite that. And also has simply secured a little bit of aluminum, a fair amount of silicon, and a fair amount of water. Valuing this high water tile, very understandable, especially as his opponent, I don't know if Soren had noticed this, has already started driving up water's price with this hydroponic farm. So my question is, would it have been better in the short term maybe to have even established 2 water tiles? That way you have plenty of water established, the best water possible established for the late game, and you're making a bit more money off the tiles than with this spare carbon that your opponent is not likely to take. Just maybe a bit of a misstep there for Soren. Gameslayer pushing to HQ level 3. He's going to grab up an additional aluminum mine, quite understandable if he's wanting to press through upgrades quickly. 2 claims left, so the question is, what does he do with these? He still hasn't established his geotherm yet, so I doubt we'll see him take an additional geotherm tile But 2 claims is always a bit of an awkward number to try and figure out what to do. Glass furnaces are an option for him, but not a convenient one at all. We'll have to see how that goes. Oh wow, Gameslayer actually just going to establish another farm, relying on this price staying reasonably high, and the farms are making money. Just not quite as much as one would hope for farms, but still enough to be well worth it. And a water pump coming down for Gameslayer, so he's going to be focusing on purchasing up glass in the short term. No big surprise there. Selling down food, quite likely to make that happen. Just getting up to that 60 value he's going to need for the upgrade, and then he can sit again and wait once he's got that glass established. Oh, a glass shortage coming in. That's going to be interesting. That's a nice little boon for Soren, really, since he's already started moving into glass production. Soren's really going to want this claim, I think. Soren has an exceptionally good use for this claim right now in this moment, allowing him to establish a glass triangle when a glass shortage is on the way. So we can see he is immediately, he knows he wants this. He knows he wants this as fast as he can get it. There we go, 28,000 over to Soren. I expect the furnace to drop immediately. There it is. That's going to be a nice boost to Soren's production. It'll be interesting to see if Gameslayer chooses to freeze that out once he sees the shortage happening, combined with the fact that Soren has so much glass production. We can see he immediately bought about 50 glass, 60 glass, somewhere in there, to respond to this shortage. His opponent did not have a large stockpile built up, so Gameslayer likely won't get punished for this particularly, but Soren still definitely going to get a nice long-term boost out of this shortage, and we'll have to see if he can use that to kind of catch back up in this game where he kind of fell behind early. Gameslayer immediately moving into a glass furnace as well upon upgrading. No big surprise, even without the silicon available. That glass is still going to be making good amounts of money. Wouldn't be surprised to see Soren, after he upgrades, throw down additional silicon production. There's a lot of silicon consumption going on now. And so additional silicon production should prove rather lucrative as this game goes on. Soren pushing to HQ level 4. That seemed a bit closer. I think he's managed to use this glass effectively to help him push through the game. But Gameslayer is going to power surge it out now that he has his own glass established. He just needs to make sure to have enough cash on hand to keep supplying these furnaces, and he'll be good to go. Soren, he has an EMP stored up. He just purchased it. Okay, there it goes. It's going to land on the glass and the steel, but not a long freeze because his opponent is, of course, scientific and is very resistant to those black market effects. Soren's got 3 claims just sitting around. He really needs to decide what to do with these. He's going to move into additional aluminum production, which I like for the time being, mostly because it's adjacent to his base. His opponent has some aluminum production, but not a ridiculous amount. He hasn't been flooding the market by any means. So additional aluminum production should be just fine, and his last 2 claims are going to be committed to reactors. His opponent also moving into reactors, Gameslayer choosing to go for those instead of the farms. He has managed to destroy food's price by having so many farms down. So that's likely an intelligent move from him. Also, interestingly enough, additional steel production came down from Gameslayer, which kind of says to me that he likely wants to push for Offworlds. Obviously, steel production is also quite valuable, up at almost $70. He's been using quite a bit of it to get things like this geotherm established. Would want to see another geotherm from him before too terribly long, but he's still okay for the moment. Oh, well, there's a geotherm auctions. We'll see how that goes. Wow, another power surge onto Soren's reactors. That is just not fun. A good reason to purchase up power surges even against your scientific opponent. Just kind of drives up the price and makes it a little harder for them to lock you out. Alright. Both players kind of handling other tasks around the map while this auction goes on. Looks like they're done with that. They're going to go ahead and press this up to whatever price it's worth to them as an EMP drops onto Gameslayer's reactors. 24,000, fairly reasonable. Yep, Soren going to go ahead and grab that away. He can also make good use of this because even though it costs 180 carbon, when you've got $10 carbon and a whole bunch coming in per second, that's really not the biggest deal in the world. Better to have that geotherm established and paying off some of your debt. Another glass furnace coming down for Gameslayer upon expansion. He has managed to hit HQ level 5. Looks like, wow, he thought about going into electronics. That would have been a really interesting move. Instead, we are going to see the Chem Lab floating out. A bit dangerous considering that fuel's a little on the expensive side, but he is trying to bring fuel's price down, so it could work out in the end. Another thing to note at this point, now that Gameslayer has hit HQ level 5, he has a claim stored up. I expect him to be trying to get to an off-world market at this point. Ooh, underground nuke. Right onto Gameslayer's water. That's not going to do too much to him, though. You have to wonder why Soren selected an underground nuke against a scientific player, knocking his medium tile down to a low. Gonna need a bit more than that out of Soren to really come back into this game. Soren has hit HQ level 5. He has strong carbon production down. He may be able to push to an off-world at about the same rate as his opponent, but we'll just have to see exactly how that all plays out. Another thing to note is that silicon is getting a bit expensive, with both players moving into even more glass production. Here comes the additional quarry from Soren. That'll be a nice boost to his economy. Both players also have these reactors, making them a lot of cash right now. Unfortunately for Soren, and fortunately for Gameslayer, we have not seen pirates this game. Not a whole lot of piracy going on, and so there's really no opportunity to be stealing all of these resources. But continual black market going ahead and raining down from Soren. Gameslayer is going to want to do the same as he can, but it looks like he's been committing to more defensive moves, like perhaps an extra claim, and we know he purchased a goon squad earlier. We'll have to see if he decides to get aggressive as well before long. Both players deciding they really hate the glass furnaces at this point. Gameslayer going to make a move into electronics, which should be profitable, despite Silicon's high price, because, well, electronics are already at $235. Soren going to make the exact same move, but once again, I think these silicon furnaces cannot be discounted. I mean, that's $500 from these two tiles for the time being, and silicon is still being consumed by both players, even if not nearly as rapidly as before, so that price will not fall off as quickly as might be expected. Here comes some pirates. Let's see what these are worth to these players. The reactor's still making a significant amount of money. Oxygen and fuel, both reasonable to steal, but silicon also is going to be king right now. As we were talking, silicon's price is very, very high, and so it'll be interesting to see if Gameslayer notices that, and if Soren notices that, and if they value these pirates appropriately, considering that fact. 18,000, 20,000, yep. I think they're noticing that that's quite a valuable resource, and neither of them want their valuable resources taken away. Another good thing to note, by the way, is that chems are off in this corner, and they are starting to send, so pirate's going to be very, very nice. Does Soren manage to grab those for 28,000? He does. Those should almost certainly drop on these chem labs. In particular, there's 180 chems flying through very soon. There, we do see the pirates have dropped. Not going to get this initial shipment, unfortunately, for Soren. We'll see if they can take any others. Stock prices are very close this game, by the way. Debt fairly equal, so that shouldn't be any real surprise. I think we should see some things like Offworlds from these players very soon. We can see Gameslayer has begun his. Soren still a little ways away from his, but he can establish one very quickly with these chem steals going on. I would love to see something like that out of Soren very soon. Just a nice way to counter his opponent's Offworld, get one established himself, get the goon squads purchased up, get the dynamite acquired, but Soren has not made that move yet. And I'm very concerned about that. He has the ability to, if he wishes. I don't know what else he's planning to do with this money. There we go. We see a free claim down. There's the Offworld. Now, both players have established an Offworld. And so you have to wonder, Gameslayer still, it looks like, with the slight edge, but not enough to topple his opponent anytime soon. Especially considering Soren is a scavenger player. You have to wonder if Soren is going to look at, if either player is going to start looking at these other special buildings. Are we going to see patent labs come down? Are we going to see engineering labs come down? Could we see a hacker array come down? Any of these things could be acceptable at this stage of the game, especially the very easy to use hacker array. It's also important to note that Soren has more of his production, his very important electronics and food production in particular, next to his base. And so that's going to make it easier for Soren to make transitions, and he's also going to receive the money from those transitions much faster, as he does not have to ship those resources across the map. It's very rare that we see a game hit these late stages like this in a 1v1, so we'll have to be looking at a few more of those particular details to see who's going to actually have an edge. It should also be noted that Soren got aggressive on his opponent very quickly. He is making a lot of money from his carbon production right now, due to all the electronics production that was online, due to the Offworld transition, things of that nature are giving him a lot of carbon in the short term, and he's using that to very effectively press into his opponent's stock. Iron shortage is on the way. That's going to be a nice boost over to Gameslayer if he chooses to take advantage of it, which he most certainly should. He is able to easily convert his steel mills into iron production, and we'll have to see if he pulls that off. More pirates available. Once again, extremely valuable, with this carbon being sent through the air at $127 a piece, and of course this food at $200 a piece. These pirates should be quite contested between these players. I honestly would expect something like 28,000 out of this. Is Gameslayer going to let it go for 20 though? Apparently he is, letting it go over to Soren for 20,000, not wanting to take on a whole lot of debt. Gameslayer very nervous about the fact he only managed apparently to secure 3 of his own stock, whereas Soren got the other 7, and so Soren is only looking for $160,000 to clean this game up. He's already on 13, he has Offworlds launching, he'll be able to both defend and attack very effectively. We can see a mutiny down on Gameslayer's Offworld for the time being. This is the advantage that a scavenger player has. Even though that scientific player is taking reduced black market damage effectively, the scavenger player can still get a lot of work done by simply having access to that black market twice as frequently. So as we can see, able to both mutiny his opponent and grab up a goon squad before his defended status wears off. That's the advantage of a scavenger player. Scavenger players absolutely loving that Offworld versus Offworld play because they can take such a huge advantage out of it. We can see Soren's up to 84% right now, but Gameslayer is striking back. He is choosing to go after his opponent's stock, but Soren, he's hit 100%. There's the red button. That's the end of the game. Well played by Soren right at the end there. We could see those slight edges really starting to come into play. First, the scavenger advantage when handling the Offworlds was a big deal. And second, I think those speedy transitions really worked out well for Soren in that game. He was just a little bit faster to make his moves. Part of that was just purely due to the fact that he was scavenger and his opponent was scientific, so he had his tiles next to him, whereas Gameslayer had his tiles far away. But you also have to wonder, Gameslayer spending a lot of cash potentially to make some of these moves, and also purchasing up a lot of carbon with his production, it looks like. Managing to purchase 60,000 carbon, I think a lot of that was from the electronics production we saw down right here. And so you have to wonder if, even though electronics were valuable, was it the correct move to put that much money in your opponent's pocket? I'm not entirely sure. Soren also doing a lot of carbon purchasing and selling. We can see he made a lot on electronics that game, 140,000. Perhaps we should have seen a bit more aggressive black market purchasing from Gameslayer leading up to that HQ level 5 to make it a little bit harder for Soren to abuse that advantage, but we can go ahead and check and see exactly how much black market happened that game. So 11 black market purchases for Soren as a scavenger, no big surprise. 3 EMPs, a power surge, an underground nuke, which is a little bit odd, a dynamite, a mutiny, and then 3 goon squads for the Offworlds at the end of the game. Gameslayer, on the other hand, only 5 black market purchases. Could have certainly done a lot more of that. He had a lead early on. He could have used it a bit more effectively to get aggressive against his opponent and begin buying things up, and he chose not to, and I think he paid for the price for it in the late game. Alright guys, we have a game 3. Let's go ahead and get into it.